Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're back with another build guide video. We have here the very beautiful Yukong, and we're going to see actually how she works and what makes her such a very strong harmony support character that also does quite a bit of damage on the side too. Now let's take a look. It's very confusing sometimes, especially with the skill, which is probably the main bulk of her entire kit. What this is when there's this uptime. If you can look at this symbol here, if there's dots here means that it's up, if there's no dots here, in this case, it means it's not active. What Roaring Bowstring does is, if it's active, it basically gives a 65% attack buff to the entire team. It scales with level, and some other abilities also get other buffs with Eidolons and stuff like that. But basically, every time an ally moves, she loses one stack of this Roaring Bowstring as well. What this means, and one important thing to note, is that if you don't have it up, means you of course don't get this buff uptime. But of course, if you use it and immediately use like your whole team's ultimate ability to do a lot of damage, it doesn't. Ultimate abilities don't eat up the stack, as well as like follow-up attacks. For example, Zealous, once she kills one target, she goes again. That also doesn't eat up the stack. Jing Yuan's Lightning Lord also doesn't eat up the stack. Clara's counter doesn't eat up the stack, and so on and so forth. The list really goes on to any follow-up attacks. We'll talk about what this implicates later on to get in the trace section as well, in the team comp video too, and the team comp section. Her ultimate ability is pretty straightforward. When you use the ultimate ability, you basically give like crit rate, crit damage to your entire team while Roaring Bowstring is active, so it's like a buff to the Roaring Bowstring passive. At the same time, she also does quite a lot of imaginary damage too. And her talent ability is pretty straightforward. It just increases this her normal attack to do more toughness breaking, a little bit more damage, also has a slight cooldown as well. So now let's take a look at how all of them work together. We're going to start off with, of course, her Roaring Bowstring. When you press E here, you can see it's just a team-wide cast. And now there's this attack buff on the entire team as well. So for example, I'm going to just show you if Natasha takes a turn and let's attack this creep here. You can see that one turn has passed and one charge is down as well. So now real quick, I'm just going to use her ultimate ability on, let's use it on this random soldier right here. So we can see from these stats that there are many buffs now. After using her ultimate ability, we get the ultimate buff here where it increases the crit rate, crit damage by 25% and 55%, and also the attack buff from the base skill as well. And on top of that, you of course have this basic attack that is enhanced 7 layers, 1 arrow ability that she has here as well, because she hasn't basic attack yet, and we will see that in a little bit. So as you can see, one thing to take note of is Yukong herself also does take up some of these turn counters. Like you see, once she took her turn as well, she loses one turn on that Roaring Bowstring, and when Natasha now has had her turn, she doesn't have the passive up as well, as you can see over here. So that's something pretty interesting and pretty important to note as well. Overall, I think that you want to pair her together with characters that move slightly slower or have more like follow-up abilities. Other than that, you will see as we reflect in her kit that she really wants to go a little bit faster as well. But now let's take a look at traces, because I think that's where it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of all the different buffs, and also the Eidolons does change her playstyle up quite a little bit as well. Okay, first things first, talking about Traces, she's a character that likes to deal good amounts of damage outside of battle as well. I'll be doing a showcase of my Yukong in a little bit once I pull Luota and do his video as well, build guide video for him. But basically, I would go all out, like all 4 of the Traces to be leveled equally. Maybe in the beginning, like if you are just focusing her mainly as a buffer for imaginary or losing for imaginary break, you can focus maybe more on the buffing ones, for example the ultimate ability, the skill ability as well. These two probably will matter a little bit more, as it scales very nicely, like 5% per level for the skill ability, and this ultimate also does gain quite a bit of damage for herself, as well as crit rate, crit damage multiplier too. So if you are lacking resources, I will focus on skill and ultimate. Talent as well as basic attack is focusing more on her damage ability part of a kit as well. I think you can hold this off a little bit more if you maybe don't have her deep into Eidolons or much resources yet. For her major traces, they are all very strong. Bowmaster here increases imaginary damage of 12%. If you're not planning to play her with imaginary characters, maybe she's your only imaginary DPS or imaginary character, you can leave this out for a while. Other than that, Archerion resists 1 debuff for 1 time and has a cooldown of 2 turns only. I think it's very strong. Allows her to build much less into effect rest, yet still have good amounts of activity on the field even if enemy has tons of debuffs. And Majesta When Roaring Bowstring is active, Yukong regenerates 2 times every time an ally takes attack. I think out of all 3, this is probably the most unconditionally beneficial. It gives her just more energy regeneration, right? Basically 4 additional energy every time the 2 stacks are gone, and so on and so forth. So overall pretty good. She has also very nice traces, as you can see here, that scale very nice with damage, making her a very potent sub DPS point of roll coming for a Harmony character. If you want a bit more damage in your roster and still want that Harmony buffer, I think Yukong is a very solid character to play. She has good amounts of survivability traces with HP as well, and of course a lot of attack, making her kit very highly useful. Low amounts of wastage even in the minor traces as well as major traces too, in my opinion. So Eidolons is where it starts to get pretty interesting, because her kit and playstyle does change quite a bit. But let's talk about it real quick. If you have a E1, she basically has an unconditional speed buff once you enter battle. Not useful for long drawn out fights, but initially if you are just looking to maybe clear PvE content in the open world simulated universe, definitely is going to be helpful. Maybe not so much in Memory of Chaos. Skyward Command, when any ally is hitting its energy limit, basically she regenerates more energy. This effect can only be triggered once per energy, and it just basically gives her much better refund for energy as well. Combined of course together the fact that one of her major traces, every time an ally takes a turn when Roaring Bowstring is passive, she does get quite a bit of energy refund from her Eidolon 2 as well as her one of her major traces. And as you can see here, if you go to the ability ultimate real quick, her energy cost is quite high at 130, meaning that she does want to have E2 as well as the major trace active to refund quite a bit of this very high burst cost as well, which will also reflect this in our build, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But now let's move on first with E4. When Roaring Bowstring is active, she deals 30% more damage to enemies, and E4 is where she starts to transition from more of like a supportive self-sustain kind of role for herself to more of like a DPS. And if you have like E4 onwards, I think it's very highly recommended that you invest in this character a little bit more, because she will start to do a significant amount of damage on field. So deals 30% more damage to enemies here, and when she uses her ultimate, she immediately gets 1 stack of Roaring Bowstring as well. And last but not least, we have E6. When Yukong uses her ultimate, she immediately gains 1 stack of Roaring Bowstring. Also very strong, gives her a good amount of refund, especially if you need to immediately do something to use like a strategic option, not only requiring that skill point. So very nice that she also has it in her ultimate ability as well. Optimal Lightcones. Personally, I'm using Dance because I have it leveled up already and I just wanted to test her damage potential out. I think it's a very useful generic all actions advanced 4 by 20%, but there is a better Lightcone 4-star in my opinion, and let's go into the Lightcone menu real quick. Okay, one thing to note is because her playstyle is going to be half support, half DPS, the attack stat of the Lightcones does matter, and out of all of the 4-star Lightcones, the free or the one that is obtainable through the standard banner is all of them have the same amount of attack at 423. The one that differentiates itself is definitely going to be Carve the Moon, Breathe the Cloud, because at max level it has 476. So if you're playing her as like a DPS kind of role, this is definitely going to outperform the other 4 stars, specifically for damage because of the higher base attack. Also, she does benefit quite a bit from all this attack, crit damage, and energy regeneration, because we saw that she has 130. I think out of all of them, this probably will be the best for her in terms of general use for both being a support as well as DPS. But not everyone buys the Battle Pass, so I'm going to give you some good alternatives too. As mentioned, Dance I think is a very generic one. All supports or Harmony characters generally can use. Planetary Rendezvous is a very interesting one, especially if you're playing and you have maybe more 5-star imaginary characters. This is definitely going to see good amounts of value, because especially if you have higher superimposition level, 24% plus that 12% she has from a major trace, quite a lot of imaginary damage bonus given to your team just from the passive effects as well. Very solid Lightcone alternative. Memories of the Past is also pretty interesting because it gives her good amounts of energy refund, which she really needs, especially if you maybe don't have an onset energy restoration rate link rope. I think this is going to be quite useful to help you in the short term. I need to test a bit more as well to see whether it works really well. I have it level 1 now, haven't invested, but I'll definitely do a follow-up video, especially if I find anything interesting too. Last but not least, the other 4-star that is available is Past and Future. When the wearer uses a skill, the next ally taking action deals a 16% increased damage. And I think this is, out of all of the characters currently that we have, she probably will be able to best utilize this, and I think it makes sense because it's her image here. The reason is because when you use Roaring Bowstring, naturally you are speed tuning your roster already. By speed tuning means you decide what characters to go first based on adjusting their base speed stats as well. And when you are already taking that into perspective, likely the next character that is taking action after Yukong is going to be using not only Roaring Bowstrings, but also be able to use this increased damage buff. So not only do you get attack buff, you get a damage buff as well from the Roaring Bowstring. Plus, if you use her ultimate, you get crit rate, crit damage, making her a buffer for every single typing. Together, if it's an imaginary character, you really have almost every single damage bonus just coming from this light cone and her kit itself. Very, very solid. I think this probably, if you don't care too much about maybe her offensive ability compared to maybe the battle pass light cone, this will be my top pick for Yukong for a 4-star Harmony light cone. Especially since this one probably will only be best used by her and maybe Bronya, but yeah, if you have this lying around, definitely worth investing into. Other than that, I think the 3-star light cones work pretty well as well. Chorus gives good amounts of attack, but she might not need this one because it gives her quite a lot. Her base, I think, is already like 60+%, 70+ from her Roaring Bowstring, so this additively might not make a significant difference. Mashing Cox is where I actually would look at a little bit more. You have 8 energy refund whenever she uses attack or gets hit. Good if you have low investment. For example, Yukong, you don't have that much resources yet, you don't have an E2, and you're struggling with energy restoration, you want the uptime as well. I think it's pretty useful, especially if you want to maybe get that crit rate, crit damage uptime. But generally, you need her to have her Roaring Bowstring up, especially at lower Eidolons. So do take note of that. Her ultimate is not very valuable without her Roaring Bowstring passive being active. Last but not least, but the battle is over, the Harmony Light Cone for Bronya. At max level is like 529 based on level, so definitely it's going to outperform if you want to do her for damage. Increases energy regeneration rate, which she does require because she has very high amounts of energy. Regenerates 1 skill point when the wearer uses their ultimate on an ally. I have yet to test it, I don't have it on my account. I don't think this ultimate triggers. If any of you have this and have Yukong, leave us a comment below. I'll be interested to see whether she gets this refund. I don't have this on my account, so I can't test this out myself, but I'll really appreciate if you guys could also input your thoughts as well if you have tested it too. This effect triggers every 2 users of Wearer's ultimate. Across the course of battle, she does use this quite often, so having an additional 1 skill point if she gets it is pretty decent refund as well. And of course, when Wearer uses their skill, the next ally taking action deals 30% more damage. For the reasons mentioned for this 4-star one, past and future, this one is excellent for her. I think it's a really solid light cone. If you have it lying around, it gives good amounts of attack stat, good buffing, good energy restoration. Use it. I think it's very, very solid for her too. Out of all of them, I do like these 2 probably the most, in my opinion, for optimal light cones. Optimal relics. I think for relics for Yukong, she has a few options. The first one that I'm going to mention is like a standard build. If you have it lying around, a 4-piece Musketeer of Wild Wheat is going to be excellent for her. It gives her good amounts of speed, basic damage increase, as well as attack bonuses for herself. If you have no time to maybe farm imaginary, you only have 1 imaginary character, I think this is a pretty solid one. She does like a bit more speed since she wants to get the uptime on her Roaring Bowstrings up a bit more, especially if you have faster moving characters. This definitely will help to keep up the uptime. The more she acts, of course, means that you will consume a bit more skill points, so that is definitely something to consider as well. But other than that, I think 4-piece Musketeer of Wild Wheat will probably be my general best pick for everyone. Other than that, I think Wastelander of Banditry 4-piece is also extremely solid. One thing to note that you need to attack debuff enemies to get this additional crit rate, crit damage bonuses. And as you can see, she's a character that mainly likes to build. She can build for a bit of speed, maybe a bit of attack as well. She doesn't have other requirements like effect hit rate, effect rest because of her major traits allowing her to block 1 debuff every 2 turns. So overall, I think that she can build into crit rate, crit damage into her main stat and substats respectively. This 4-piece might not be as valuable as some other DPS characters, so that is something that to consider. But if you wanted to and increase her damage potential, I think you can push the limit with this one very well. Otherwise, you can easily go for a 2-piece imaginary damage bonus, a 2-piece attack bonus. I think that works well for relatively lower investment Yukongs as well, where you don't want to like min-max that character because you have plenty of other DPSs to think about. Or planet ornaments, I think the best in slot will probably be Fleet of the Ageless. It gives just the team a little bit more attack when her speed is above 120, and most of the time you'll be wandering around her with a little bit more speed so she can get uptime for Roaring Bowstrings. So I highly recommend Fleet of the Ageless as the main set. You could run Inert Salsoto as well. It increases ultimate damage which she benefits from, and also more crit rate if you're building her more of an offensive build. As for energy restoration rate, Sprightly Von Wack, she has quite a bit of energy restoration rate in her overall kit. This 5% in my opinion doesn't really make too much of a difference. The secondary effect is only once you enter the battle. It's nice to start off first so you get the Roaring Bowstring active. I think this is a little bit more conditional than something more unconditional like Fleet of the Ageless. So that is overall like just my thoughts on the two of them. Either way, you can't go wrong with both of them, but personally because of the low amounts of 5% only here, and as well as she has very high cost 130, and she already has a lot of in her E2 as well in her major trace energy refund, you might not want to go for this one, especially if other characters can use this more. I generally would prefer Fleet of the Ageless. So we just talked about the sets that I recommend. Now let's see what I'm using as well as the main stats that I would recommend for this particular character. Here I'm running the 2-piece Fleet of Ageless, as mentioned, just to give a team-wide buff, and I'm running a hybrid of a 2-piece attack, 2-piece imaginary damage bonus for her as well. Overall, I'm running her as a bit of a hybrid damage dealer and support, a middle investment. When I have more Eidolons, I'll push her more for damage. I'm generally looking for attack, crit rate, crit damage stats, speed as well for the sub-stats that I have. HP of course will be a bit nice of an add to have, so that's generally what I'm focusing on as well. For my main stat, I'm using a crit damage main stat here with I would like to have this as crit rate and crit damage ideally, but I don't have one on my account, so I'm using a crit damage crit rate. She has pretty decent amount of crit rate currently already. I'm quite happy with that so far, but I want to push it up a bit more if I can find better gear. And for the boots, I'm running a speed boot with a bit of crit damage here. Ideally, I like a bit more crit rate, especially with my current setup that I have. So good amounts of speed. I think when she moves faster, more uptime on her Roaring Bowstring. And for the Planisphere, I'm running an imaginary damage bonus together with an energy restoration rate with crit rate, crit damage subs as well. I find it in energy restoration rate nice to have in the substat. She already gets a lot of attack from her Roaring Bowstring passive, like 70, 60 plus, 70 plus as well at a mid investment kind of Yukong. So a lot of attack bonuses there, and I think energy restoration rate might be the best for the Link rope as well. Last but not least, let's talk about team compositions. I think if you are having a team composition for Yukong, the first and foremost, I think a full imaginary team is definitely going to be beneficial. As of time of recording, I put Yukong first, so I don't have Luota, but I'll be pulling him right after this video, so I can make more content on Luota as well, and other imaginary characters being released in future. I'm just going to put maybe a standby character here, that since I don't have Luota in this slot, I'm just going to put him here real quick. I think a character like this and maybe a healer like Luota will be really interesting to have as a main imaginary team. Other than that, characters that don't really care too much about skill points definitely benefit a lot more from Yukong. Characters, for example, like Ireland, I think could see quite significant amounts of play together with Yukong, especially since he doesn't use a lot of energy or skill points rather. And if you want like more in-depth guide on team composition to see like maybe you have many different characters and you want to know how they work, I've already done a full video on the channel. You can click on it right here if you're interested to know more combinations of characters rather than those mentioned here as well. Thank you so much for watching. Do click on this video here and see you in the next video.